Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from Standard Chartered Sadi Berhad, and today we are going to talk about issue related to Sukuk. Without wasting time, we will move to the first speaker that will discuss the introduction of Sukuk.
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. First, we need to know what is Sukuk and bonds. Sukuk is a financial or capital aid with Sharia compliant terms and structures that aim to provide returns, while bond, on the other hand, is a financial instrument in which an investor loans money to a firm or government for a specific length of time in exchange for periodical interest payment. So how to invest in this Sukuk and how it works? The Sukuk process uses Islamic contract to connect Sukuk issuers with investors. In order to issue Sukuk, Sukuk issuers will securitize assets. Interested investor will receive a certificate that shows possession of the asset, risk and cash flows. Those investors have the right to receive money equal to the Sukuk's value when it matures.
Thank you to Brother Hazir Hasif, and now we will move to the next speaker that will discuss the most important part in our discussion today, which is findings.
Thank you to the moderator. Now I would like to present about Sukuk in Saudi Arabia and Malaysia. In 2002, Hanko Reneka issued a single Sukuk. The Sukuk had been seen by the company as a Sharia compliant product that specialized in transaction securitization. The Saudi Arabian Basic Industry Corporation, SABIC, issued the next Sukuk in 2006. One of the historically well-known facts that happened regarding the Sukuk issuance in Saudi Arabia is the issuance of the first sovereign Sukuk in January 2012. Sovereign Sukuk means the instrument issued by the various governmental bodies of the state. 2013 was another banner year for Sukuk issuance in Saudi Arabia, with total issuance of USD 15.21 billion. We can now summarize the Sukuk issuance and implementation according to their respective structure in Saudi Arabia. Various structures have been utilized over time, with Istima and Murabaha being the most common, accounting for little more than 30% of all Sukuk issued to date. Now, we're moving on with our beloved country, which is Malaysia. Malaysia's emergent as a Sukuk issuance producer dated back in 1990, where Shell MDS Sdn Bhd issued Sukuk amounting to 125 million ringgit. The issuance of Sukuk has been increasing gradually since then. After that, in 2008, Malaysia has continued its pioneering effort in supporting new structures such as the exchangeable Sukuk Musyarakah by Khazanah Nasional Berhad, which is the Malaysian government's investment holding arm, after introducing the world's first global sovereign Sukuk in 2002. Furthermore, in 2012, Malaysia continued to retain its position as the number one country in the world for Sukuk issuance, maintaining a 71.6% market share. Lastly, in 2014, the central bank's total issuance of Sukuk reached $50.2 billion globally, which represents 43.1% of all securities issuance. Bank Negara Malaysia is recognized as the leader in Sukuk issuance, and its operations are being leveraged by other central banks globally. In a more recent note, in 2021, RM49.25 billion corporate bonds and Sukuk were issued in the third quarter of 2021, which is an increase of 264.4% from the previous quarter, and is one of the biggest issuance of the entire Sukuk emergence in Malaysia.
Then I will move to difference between Sukuk and bond. The first one is in the context of asset ownership versus debt obligation. Sukuk is backed by tangible assets, but bond ownership simply indicates a debt obligation. The second one is the assets used to back Sukuk must be Sharia compliant. They cannot include investment that are from what Islam has prohibits. Bonds, on the other hand, can be used to fund any asset, project, business or joint venture that is compliant with local law. The third difference is Sukuk can rise in values as their underlying assets rise in value, and vice versa, while bond holders are not affected by the performance of the underlying asset. In the simpler explanation, Sukuk have variable value and bond have fixed value. The last one is the role of the purchaser. In the case of a bond, the purchaser serves as a lender, while the bond issuer serves as a loan recipient. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Akmal. I will continue with the pros and cons of Sukuk. For the first pros, Sukuk is a method of raising financial resources for large companies such as multinational corporations, multinational development institutions and government agencies that require enormous resources that are difficult to meet by individual investors alone, accordance with Islamic legal injunctions and Maqasid al-Sharia. For the second pros, many investors are concerned about whether there are varied sources of income available from various investment outlets that can also be liquidated easily to meet needs as they arise. This legitimate concern is addressed if Sukuk is used, as there are opportunities in the secondary market for trading in Sukuk, where investors can sell their current holdings in full or in part for cash. The third pros is Sukuk has a more equitable method of distributing wealth, in that all investors are treated fairly and based on actual profits made. The fourth pros is because of Sharia constraints, Islamic banks and other financial institutions sometimes struggle to manage their liquidity situations. Corporate entities can now issue Sukuk, which may have vast resources trapped in excess liquidity. The fifth pros is the use of Sukuk as source of finance has the potential to sustain the public-private partnership that has been used to raise required financing for infrastructure, provision and development. Last pros is forwardly Sukuk has the potential to boost economic development activities due to the infrastructure financing attributes it possesses. For the first cons is related to the viability of an economy in which the private sector produces public infrastructure and goods. Thus, where there are fault lines in the overall economic landscape, this influences the performance of Sukuk. Another barrier is the ability to establish a legal framework. From the perspective of private sector investors, the existence of a clear and consistent legal framework is a necessary condition for participation. The further weakness of Sukuk is the majority of law in various jurisdictions are inconsistent with Sharia provisions and thus do not favor Islamic finance. The last cons is there are limited number of assets that can be traded in the secondary market for Sukuk because those assets are Sharia compliant.
Sukuk has played an important part in the development of Islamic finance, specifically in the Islamic capital markets. Traditional short-term bonds, commercial papers and notes are interest-based and banned in Sharia. In times like this, financing through the issuance of Sukuk will help to drive both the real economy and the financial sector. A collaboration between fiqh academics and financial specialists is required for long-term expansion of the Islamic financial industry. Thank you, and that's all from us.
Thank you to all speakers for the information and the idea, and thank you to you guys also for having us. I think that's all from us. See you guys in the next video. Assalamualaikum. Bye.